All right. Good day, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. We have an exciting ASP.NET project. But before we start with our work, um, I'm trying to reach 500 subscribers. Can you please go there before you start with your lesson and then just hit subscribe if you find value in this channel. Okay, let's start with our project. See if I can move this somewhere down there at the bottom. Okay, and then I'll move this somewhere where you don't see it. Perfect. We have an exciting project today. Just gonna go through the project description and what is required um, for this project or for this application that we need to develop. Okay, so we are going to develop a job portal dashboard system. So I figured let's just do a realistic project of what everyone wants of us is we are all looking for jobs, or you know someone who's looking for a job. So other than using other people's application or website to find for jobs, how about you develop your own website that you're going to consume an API that you can apply jobs on your own website. I'm sure that will look good to you as the job applicant and also to the people that you are trying to work for. So this job application, we will be using ASP.NET Core MVC Web API. We're going to use a database SQL Server, and we're going to use Docker as well. And then lastly, we're going to run automated testing. So this project could be multiple parts. I'm using CapCut. It's only giving me 2 hours. I'm not sure if all of it will fit on this project, but we'll see as we go. So let's just go through of what is happening or what we are going to do for this application. So a lot of people, as I said, that you might know someone or yourself, you're looking for a job and you struggle to find a place where you can apply for jobs that you want. And this could be a little bit challenging. We have a lot of websites that are out there. Some are not user friendly, some are, but all of us, when we are looking for jobs, we're using some sort of a website that has been developed by someone. So majority of these websites, they are consuming APIs. So we are required to develop an application that will do the same thing. So the reason that our application is broken down into 3 parts is because we want to ensure that we follow the modern software development standards. So we are going to use MVC as our front end, and then we're going to use ASP Web API as our back end. We'll be using a database. It's not going to save much, but I just want to show you how you can use it for your application, and then you can expand this website of yours to do anything that you want, to be honest. And then we're going to be consuming an API from one of the famous companies that are assisting in pulling jobs out there. Then we want to make sure that before we deploy our application, we have automated testing. This will be the last thing. It's not supposed to be deployed. This one is just for you to test if everything works well. But as I go, whenever I finish a part, I will test it manually to check. This is just an extra knowledge that I will be imparting to you. Okay, and before people can apply for jobs, they need to register and log in into our system. We are going to do a basic website for, we want it to search for jobs and apply. That's it. So that's what it's going to have. And then we will be able to have a dashboard where we are going to see the different types of jobs that it's able to pull. Okay, as I said, that this project will be divided into a couple of projects. I'll see how many projects that I'll be able to pull from here. Part one, this will be the API, which is the back end. most of the work will be centered around here. I'll be using ASP.NET Web API for that. And then I'll be consuming a free external API job, Adzuna, or I don't know how you pronounce it, but that's the one that we will be using. We will be grabbing, these are real jobs that we will be grabbing. So we are not playing academic work here. We are doing some real stuff that you can also apply for a job yourself. And then we'll be able to store the jobs that we retrieved in our database, expose API endpoints, particularly for searching jobs, to see the jobs, and also to have a nice dashboard where we are going to have the statistics. And then the API will be composed of controllers, model services. Will go through all of these things while we start with our coding. And then for manual testing, as I go to ensure that everything works, either way our application at the end will be using Swagger. That's what we will be using. The database should only stay inside of an API. And then part 2 will be our MVC, which will be the front end. So we're going to use identity for authentication. And then that's where they're going to see a nice page to search for jobs, see all the job listing, and then the dashboard to see the summaries of all jobs that the API pulls. Then you'll have a nice button that you'll be able to apply for a particular job. So again, MVC will not have any database that will talk about jobs, and then it will communicate with the web API. Please note that identity will have a database that will be sitting here, but it has nothing to do with your web API. Okay, Bootstrap, that's what we'll be going to use for MVC. I already have this. I'll share with you guys the GitHub link where you can go and copy and paste the HTML stuff or Razor pages. I don't do that normally. I just share so you get it at the end of the lesson, or you can check on the description of the YouTube. You should be able to find the link there. And then part 3, there's a database. We'll be doing this as we go. We will be relying on entity framework to be able to translate C# to SQL, particularly running migration, creating DbContext, and connecting the database through a connection string. And then lastly, part 4, we want to use Docker to be able to run our application to avoid that it works on my machine, it doesn't work on your machine. So we'll have 3 containers, one for SQL Server, one for API, and one for MVC. And then the last thing that will happen, it will be the testing phase. That one, I'm sure that I won't be able to finish. So that will be the second part of the videos. Enough with theory, let's just go and start with our application. So I will open a browser. The very first thing that I want us to do is to register for an API. So that's the first thing that we are going to do. We said we're going to use Adzuna API. So what I want you to do is to go to your favorite browser. You're going to type Adzuna API, and then just hit search. In fact, let me just do this. Use a private browser. Effect. And then the first link there, that's the one that you want. You'll see it with developer.adzuna.com. Just click it. We want to be able to get 2 things here that we are going to use for our application. One will be the app ID and also the app key. This will be crucial in order for us to use this API. So we are going to register. You'll spend a lot of time here. Username, what I did for mine is to grab my email address, and then I use it as a username. There as well, I use it as an email, put a password that should be a minimum of 15 characters. And then on the organization here, you can call it your name, like your namespace, job market application. And then here, find any website. If you're a student, just put the website of your school. Or if you have your own website or your portfolio, you can just put a website. It doesn't matter as long as it's a link. And then when you come here to your application of the Adzuna API, so you're going to click the drop down here because you don't want to pay money. So you will select personal or academic research. And then when you come here, please go with 0 to 5,000 visitors. That's the only thing that you need. After that, you're going to click sign up. And then that will be it. Just log in. And then once you log in, you will be greeted with something that looks like this. And then all you need is to click your dashboard. So you're going to wait here. We will come back later on, but particularly what we are interested with is this part here that says API access details. So we're just going to hold on here, and then we are going to start with our project now. So open your Visual Studio. In fact, let me just use 2026 because I always use 2022. So you click create project. So what you need to think about here is that you have 3 projects at minimum that needs to communicate with one another. So that must tell you something, that your project or your application must have a certain structure so that all your projects are able to communicate with one another with ease and in one place. So what I'm going to do here is that I want to put all these projects that I want to build into the same folder. In that folder, we refer to it as a solution. A solution folder is just, for those who are comfortable with databases, you can call it a parent folder. Or think of when you're using a Windows machine, you right click on your Explorer, File Explorer, you create a new folder, and inside you have subfolders. These projects that I want to add can be equated to subfolders. So you'll have a parent folder that you created first, and then you have the children or the child folders that you're going to have, which in this case will be our project. So if you are doing this for the first time, you're going to click there on search, and then you're going to type blank solution. This is C#. You'll see it with this purple infinite sign. So you're going to click it once, and then you click next. So now let's give a nice name for our application. We are going to call this job portal solution. Job portal solution. And then I'm just going to click create. Okay, perfect. So now we have an empty project or a parent folder or a solution folder that doesn't have anything at this moment, which is good. So now, this is when we're going to start to add the projects that we want. We know we need an API, we know we need an MVC. That is the 2 things that are called to this project, and later on, we will be adding testing. So to add a project into this open code to this folder, close code, is we need to right click the solution, not there at the top, just the solution that has the purple infinite sign. You're going to right click there. You're going to look for a button that says add. It is a new project, so we are going to go with new project. So we'll start with the API because this is the heart of our application. This is the one that is going to consume that Adzuna API to be able to pull real jobs into our MVC. So you're going to click there. You can type API on the search bar if you're doing this for the first time. Or you can, if you have done it before, you are looking for ASP.NET Core Web API. You click it once, and then you click next. So now let's give our API nice jobs. What I like to do is to ensure that the names are similar. You can call them different names. It doesn't matter. So we'll call this job hotel. It is an API. So I will end with the word API. And then what is important here, it's on the location. Please make sure that it is inside of the parent folder or the solution folder that you created. If it's not there, click down there or drop down, it will navigate you, or rather you will navigate to that folder and then click next once everything's sorted. Okay, the framework, if you're using 2026, so let's go with .NET 10. Authentication, we'll just leave it like that. And then configure for HTTP, that is fine. This is just to secure the communication between your browser and your application itself. Enable for container, this is Docker. We'll do it later. I want to do it differently. And please note that there are other ways you can do this. I'm just using this approach here. You can add Docker, which will simplify this project, but the way I want to do it is for those that maybe you have a project that you want to run it inside of your Docker later on, it will serve to assist you there. Then ensure that you have enabled Open API support, because this one will give you Swagger to be able to test your application. Leave this one open, and then we're going to use our controllers. The last one, we leave it like that, and then you press create. Okay, maybe for those who are new, I'm not an expert in API, I just know the basics that allows me to do nice application. The API in this instance, in this project, you can consider it as the engine of our project or the heart of our project. What it will do is that it will talk to that Adzuna Web API to be able to fetch all the jobs that are posted there and be able to retrieve them. And in the process of retrieving that information, it's going to clean it to look nice according to how we are going to tell it and the information that we want to have in our application. Once they have the clean data, and then we will store that into our database. Remember, we are using SQL Server. And then once it's inside the database, then it will be sent to our front end, which is the MVC that we are going to finish with in this project. That's what it does. So we need to install packages here that we are going to use, because first thing we said is we'll need to use the database. So there are many ways you can do this. You can, not many, I think it's 2 or 3 ways. You can go through tools, or you can right click. I prefer to right click now, especially when you're going to have multiple projects, because when you click tools here, it doesn't necessary point to the project that you are just going to install. You can do it here, or you can go here in Package Manager console. Then you can use the command to install this. But there's a limitation with the command here. If the version, it doesn't match with your .NET framework, and then you're going to have issues. So rather than doing that, I prefer that you can either use these 2 ways. So I'm going to right click my API, and then I'm going to see it here to where it says manage NuGet packages. Okay, so when it opens, it will land on the install tab. We don't want that, so you click browse button, and then you can click on the search box. So the first thing is that we are looking for SQL Server. So type SQL Server on the search bar, press enter. And then always remember that we are working with Entity Framework Core. So you are looking for Microsoft.Entity Framework Core.SQL Server. The version here, it's fine for me, 10. For those who are using, if you selected .NET 9, then please click the drop down and downgrade it to at least 9.0.0. Okay, and then you just click here. And then apply, accept. We don't have to read that. And then the next one, you're going to say full stop or dot tools. Then press enter. Could be small letters or capital letters. It does not matter. And then you're looking for Microsoft.Entity Framework Core dot tools. So this is going to assist with running migration. Again, for those who selected .NET 9 or .NET 8, please downgrade. But for those that have 10, it's okay. You click next, accept. And then the last one, that will be dot design. Again, you're looking for entity framework code design. And then you're going to click install once again and click apply, click accept. So now the packages that we just installed here, it's going to allow the API to be able to talk to the database, which is the SQL Server, and be able to create the database tables that we are going to use when we run migration. The process of running migration is when we actually create the database and the tables that it corresponds with. All right, so what we need to do, I talked about tables here. So to have tables, we put them inside of model folder. Inside the model folder, it works as a table schema. So we know that in real time or in real life, a table is composed of rows and columns. So what I want you to take the model folder with is that think of you're creating a table that has columns. It doesn't have rows, it has columns. And then those columns, you are going to use them in order to retrieve or to get data from the people that are going to use your application. So what we need now is to create a table and we give it the columns so that we can know what type of information should be stored in that particular table. So what we are going to do, I'll save this. You're going to add a new folder because the API does not come with those folders, but the MVC will give you some of the folders. So you're going to right click API, and then you're going to go to add new folder, and then this will be model. Please make sure that you write it exactly as that, models. And then inside of the model, we are going to have a class that is going to represent one job record inside of our database. So that means that it's a table that is going to represent what will applying for a job or a job, what will a job look like in our application. So we're going to right click models, we go to add, then we're going to click class. And then we're going to name this inside double quotes a table, job. You don't have to put .cs, it will put it automatically. Then you can click enter. Okay, let me increase the size there. I'll put this to 150. Okay, a class, it is like a blueprint. So it will tell C# what type of information a job must supposed to have. Okay. Later on, Entity Framework will use this class to be able to create jobs table inside of our SQL. We will talk about that when we get there. So find this, open curly brace, press enter just to go inside. We need to create a property here or columns. You can take it like that, columns of our table. So in C#, a property, you can equate it with a column so that you can help you to remember. It just tells what type of information is supposed to be stored, the name of the column, the data type as well. So the first one will be an ID. So we're going to say public int because an ID it saves as a primary key. Then we have our get and setters. Okay, let me talk about this now. I would fast track this because there are shortcuts of creating this. Now, this property will be able to store a unique ID, or what we refer to a primary key, for each job in our database. So int, again, it is just a data type, which means that you can be able to store a whole number. Entity Framework will treat that column or property named ID as the primary key. By default, we always need to start with that. Okay, so shortcut PROP or prop, you press tab in your keyboard. The second property that we're supposed to have, or column here, it must be able to store the job ID that comes from the external API. So we're going to keep it so that we can recognize the same job if it appears over and over. So I said external job. So here's a trick. It's when you hear the word ID, in your mind automatically, it sends you to use integer as a data type. You're going to have an issue, especially when you're dealing with APIs. So to be safe, use strings. So we're going to change this to string, and please know that two types of strings. You have a capital letter and small letter one. So go with the small letter one. Let's call this external ID. And then we're going to have the next one. The next one will be the title. So this will store the job title, like for instance, software developer, a business analyst, a software tester. So we'll be used to store that. It will be a string as well. So we're going to call this title. And then we need to know which company is posting that job. Again, that will be a string. So we're going to grab the company name. Okay, and then we also need the location, because you need to know where the job is posted. Location. And then you need the description of the job. Seems like IntelliSense is given me. Okay, the most important part, we need to know the minimum salary. So we are going to go with decimal for this one. So we'll say salary mean for the minimum salary, which is going to copy this. And then we need the maximum salary as well. And then we need a link of that particular job. Remember, these jobs are not ours. We're just pulling them from different sites. So you want the actual link that will allow you to apply for this job. So URL. And then because we are going to store this inside of our database, so we need a date. The date data type here will be the date time. And then we can say what time is this job has been saved. So, all right. And then we want to get the date automatically, so we can just say date time dot now. Because my time format it's a little bit different. You guys all go with UTC dot, but you can just say dot now. It doesn't make that work. So what you need to avoid here is, you see this green squiggly line. Sometimes it causes issues when you run migration, because your database might be confused without your application. When you run it the first time, it's going to expect this field to be supplied with value, because it will tell you that it cannot be nullable. So to fix that from the get-go, I will show you guys different ways of doing that. So the string, you can always go with just to say that this can be nullable. So just copy this And then the title as well, I'll do the same thing. Company name, you don't do this for integers, by the way. And then for the location as well, there's a string. We're going to do the same thing for description. We're going to do the same thing for the salary one. It's already been done, but in case you have this, just put a question mark there. It'll do the same thing. And then let's see, we finish with that one. Okay, just to be safe, I'm just going to put a question mark there, just to say that this can be nullable. Done. So we have the columns of our table here. So if you had a table, just this would be all the columns. You'll see it when we run migration. So now we are going to create a folder that's going to store our data. So you will right click your application, you say add, then you go for new folder, and then you are going to say, let's call this data. Just hold on a bit. Okay, so inside here, we have a particular class that we are interested in. And this particular class, its job will be able to bridge between C# code and SQL Server. Another job that it will be responsible for is to tell Entity Framework which class must become a database tables. Without the use of this class, the class that I'm about to do now, the API will not be able to know how to save jobs inside of a database. So hence we create the folder and I name it data. We're going to right click data and you say it is a concrete class. So usually developers like to call this application DbContext or app DbContext for short. Then you can say add. So the first thing, it will be to open a little bit of space there at the top so you can import the classes, the packages that you want to use. So since we are going to create database tables, remember we have a database table schema inside of our model class. You want to make sure that it's able to see that. And how do you do that? You're going to say using the name of your application, which is job portal dot, you want it to see the models, and they close with semicolon. And again, to allow C# to move between C# and SQL syntax, we use Entity Framework Core. So we're going to say using Microsoft dot Entity Framework Core, and then we close. That's good enough. And then just open there the first curly brace of your class. And then what we need to do now is to change this class to be able to access all the settings that or the configuration that is needed to turn this class that we have inside of a model into a table. So what we're going to do is that we're going to create a relationship with a class that comes from Entity Framework Core, which is DbContext. We don't create this, it comes from Entity Framework Core. So now we can go and start with our work. The first thing that we need to do is to create a constructor. This constructor will be able to receive database configuration that we are going to write inside of our program.cs. I'll show you when we get there. And then the constructor will then receive the database settings or options or configuration from the program.cs. And then what we are going to use, it is what we call the DB DbContext option that will be able to carry the settings that we need. And what will be the most important setting that we need? It will be the connection string that we will have later on, and to be able to allow this class to create the database and its table. So to create a constructor, we use a shortcut here. We'll say Ctrl+R. We press tab. So inside here of this constructor, we are going to inject the DbContext that I just explained. So you're going to write DbContext option, this one. I want you to notice these angle brackets there as well. So I'm just going to double click it and then I'll put the angle brackets. That is important. So we want to get the settings. Where do we want to apply these settings? Into this class that we just created. So you're going to put it there. And then what we're gonna do now is we want to create an object name for these settings. We normally use option, so you can use anything that you want. Now, since we inherited the DbContext, you need to specify who is the parent. You specify by putting the columns and use this word called base. We use base to be able to show who is the parent class, and inside there, please pass option. So you are passing the settings that you just injected there to where? To the parent class. Who is the parent class? DbContext. That one. Inside here, you don't put anything. In fact, I highly recommend that you leave it like that so that you don't make a mistake. So now let's go and create the actual table. We create a table in the form of a property. So we'll say prop, but instead of the normal data type, we use dbset. Again, dbset has angle brackets, so you need to put your angle brackets there. Now, this property is going to tell entity framework to create a jobs table. The dbset means a collection of record from the database. So each job object will become one row inside of a job table. Hence I said that the properties inside of a model class, we consider them as columns. So any job, one job, will be a record, a full record inside of our table. So we already have a class inside of a model. We just need to call it there. And then there we just give the name of the table. So this will be the name of the table. If you look at this class, pin it inside of a model, this is just a columns table without a name. This is the name of the class. Don't confuse it with what I'm explaining. This will be the name of the table and it will contain all the columns that we have there. Then click save or Ctrl S to save it. So we said one of the most important configuration that needs to be passed here, it is a connection string. The connection string, it identifies few things. It needs the server where your database is hosted, and then it will need a database name, and then some form of security that has to do with your database. Remember, we're using SQL Server here. So I'll save this, and then I will look for, by the way, I forgot to mention, because it's an API that comes from Entity Framework or ASP.NET, you have given classes just for you to have a feel of how it works. So look for weather forecast there, delete it for me, and then go to the controller, collapse it. You'll see there's a weather forecast controller, delete it as well. We don't need that. We must leave our application clean. So if you don't have SQL Server Management Studio, please download it. If you prefer to use your SQLite, you can go ahead, or Oracle. The steps are the same, but if you want to download, please go and check SQL Server Management Studio online. I'm sure you'll get a nice tutorial on how to install it. I want to open mine so I can grab the server name. So just open. Just gonna give it a second. If you know your server name, it's fine. You can grab it. I have mine like that. So I have my own. So after that, go to your project, look for app settings.json, double click it. So it looks like this in a JSON format. So click inside of the opening curly brace, press enter. So now we are going to create a connection string. A connection string will allow us to connect to that Server Management Studio engine to be able to create a database so that we can create our own table. So to start with the connection string, you're going to click Shift and hold in your keyboard and then find a pair of double quote. Click it once and then you'll see something like that. And then once you are inside, you'll see a connection string. Double click it. That is a connection string. Now, it works in two ways. You have a key and a value. So far we provided a key, we need a value. A value comes after your colon. So you're going to click Shift colon, and then it's going to give you what it just gave me automatically. You press enter. So now let's start. Your connection string that will lead you to your database must have a name. So shift pair of double quotes, and then you're going to give this name. Normally we use default connection. You can call it anything you want. Then that's a key. You move with an arrow to the outside, shift colons. I don't know if those are semicolons or colons, but yes, those ones. And then now you can see our cursors blinking inside of a pair of double quotes. So now this is where we are going to provide. We need a server. And then you put a server, you write it exactly as I did. You put an equal sign or an assignment operator. And then you paste the server name that you have, that is mine. And then you consider this as a full statement. You close it with semicolon. That's number one. We put this on the same line. And then we create database. Now we need to create a database name, put an assignment operator. So let's call this jobs portal. Jobs portal DB. That's a full statement, columns. Now we go with trusted connection. Entity framework needs this. You just move to the right. Trusted connection, and please set this to true, because you won't be able to connect to your server, SQL Server Management Studio, if this is not there. There is a full statement. And then we are going to put the last one, trust server certificate. Please make sure the spelling is correct as well. The engine wants this as well. Then we're going to set this to true. Then we close it. That's it. That's it. So if it was a normal application, we will be done. But because we are going to work with an API, so what I want you to do, find this closing curly brace of your connection string, the comma, position your cursor, then press enter. Now, we need to be able to connect to our API. Remember the name of our API? Adzuna, please. Adzuna, this is just a name. It's just that you need to, okay, I forgot to put it inside of the double quote. So we're going to call this Adzuna. You can give it any name you want. Consider that as a key. Then put colons there. And then you put double quotes there. And then there where you have that small green squiggly line, put a comma, and then go back inside of that object. All right. So now what do we need? We need an app ID. So a key. So you're going to write exactly as I am app ID. Then go outside of this column, put the columns there. Then for now, just leave it like that. Then put a comma. We go to the next one. A key. We need the API key here, so that will be app key, arrow, colons, double quotes there. Then arrow, you comma. So now we need to specify, because I don't know if this API it is international, but if it's there, and then you have to specify where you're coming from. I'm from South Africa, so a key, I'll say country. You use your own country here, and then colons, and then we put there, so I'll put SAR for South Africa there. So where do you get an app ID and app key? So now you go back to your Adzuna API. So you're going to click here API access. You won't be able to see mine for security reasons. And then you'll see here for application ID, that is an app ID that we did. So copy, you'll see it will say this is the application ID you should send with each API. Below that, you should have a combination of alphabet and numbers. So copy that. It's not long, 2, 4, 6, 8. It's 8 characters. Copy it, and then go back to your application where it says app ID, paste it inside. Now let's go back again. Now we're looking for application key. So application key, and then you will see where it says these are application key used to authenticate requests. And then you'll have a button that says create new key. And then below that button, there's a long number there. Copy that long number. Then go back and put it inside where it says app key. Then I'll just paste it there. So now we have two things now. We have an application ID. We also have an application key. So save this for me. Now let's go to the heart of or the blood of an application, which is program.cs, to be able to register all of these services. Double click your program.cs. You can just click it once, should be sufficient. We are going to amend this. I'm not going to go through what each code does here. Will explains the one that we want. So don't touch anything except the one that I'm telling you to do, because you will mess up your API. This is the blood, so it needs this to work. So let's locate builder.services.add controllers. We need the controllers, by the way. So what I want you to do, find builders.services.add open API. Comment it out. We already have it. By you leaving it here, Swagger will have issues allowing you to run your API. So we are going to add Swagger here, endpoint, so that it is able to be discovered when we go and test it. So Swagger will need what I'm about to do so it can find and be able to display our API endpoints. So it's a service. So you start with builder dot services dot add endpoint API explorer. Then leave it like that. Now we're done. So now we need to install two packages that I forgot. If we need to use Swagger, then we need to install the packages. So head back to your API project, right click it, and then go back to manage NuGet package for solution. And then you want to make sure that it's sitting inside where it says browse. Okay, I think I'm going to cut this project into 3 parts because it will be long. I'm not even close to finishing the first part. So when you watch this, look out for the second part, and then you look out for the third part as well. This will be for the API, and then I will stop at heading MVC project, and then the second project will just continue from there. Okay, so to use Swagger, just type Swagger Gen on your search bar. Press enter. You are looking for this one that's called swashbuckle.asp.net core.swaggergen. Make sure that the numbers are right, 1.36 billion. Just click enter. So here's the trick here. For those who are using .NET 9, please at least install 9 or install 6, because the ones in middle, they are unstable. So if you choose 6, it works. So just in case this one does not work, decrease it to 6 at least, it will work. Then I'll click install. Then I'll just apply, accept. Then we need another one for the lovely user interface from Swagger. So you'll search for Swagger UI. Again, it's from Swashbuckle. Press it, the number's 1.15 billions. Then I'll click install there. Then I'll just say apply. Give it a moment. Okay, it's all done. Then I can close here, I can close that. Let's go back to our services. So now we added the endpoints that Swagger will need when it runs our API. So what we need now is we need a way for Swagger to run or to create documentation. So Swagger will give us a browser page where we can test the API before we can get so excited building the front end, which is your website or your MVC. So to do that, so let's go and add Swagger again. So we'll say builder dot services dot add Swagger, start with gen, and then put your run brackets there. That is that. So now we are done. All we need to do now is we need to go and pull. Remember this class that we created there, the app DbContext. For us to create a database and its table, we need to register it as a service here. So let's go and do that in a form of dependency injection. So we're going to say builder dot again services dot add DbContext. Look at what is suggesting there, the angle brackets, do not forget it. So I'll put the angle brackets there. So this line that I'm about to do now, it's going to register application DbContext class that we created with its dependency injection. So you might be asking, what is dependency injection, or DI for short? So in ASP.NET, it means that it can automatically give classes the object they need. We don't have to manually tell it. Whatever it needs, it's going to give it by itself. So now we are going to pass the class that we created there, which is DbContext. Now I'm going to move out from the angle brackets. So now we're going to make it in the form of a constructor. So we need now an arrow function. The way I read it is an arrow function. So you can use any letters that you want, but we like to use to match it with what we have done, the object name inside of your app DbContext. We call that one options. Then I'll call this arrow function equal sign with an angle that faces on the right. Please note that you can call this whatever you want, it doesn't matter. And then once we have this, I'll press enter, and then curly braces inside. So I'll explain what I'm doing now. So we'll say options dot which database do we want to use. Instead we're using use SQL Server. If it turns orange while you're busy typing, automatically put round brackets. So I'll put round brackets and then I'll go inside, say builder. Remember, we're looking for configuration, right? Then I'll put a dot. We're looking for configurations. What is it that we are looking for? We're looking for the connection string that we created inside of app settings.json. So I'll put a full stop there and then we'll say get connection string. It turned yellow, round bracket. Please note that there is 3 there. You gotta have 3. And then if it's a connection, it's a string, it means that it must go inside of double quote. So now you must get the name of your connection string. So go back to app settings, get that the name of your connection string, and then go back and then paste it there as it is. Then I'll just close here, and then I'll go to the end, then close that statement as well. Okay, we don't like reds there, so let's see why it's cry. Isn't this method or isn't it using checking your application? Sometimes these things, they are not even user friendly. So okay, I added DbContext there. That should, yeah, that should be work. I don't know if you guys have noticed there. I made a mistake. I swapped this. Let's go to, okay, this one, data. Okay, yeah, the add DbContext, that is fine. That's the mistake that I made there. Must get the name of a class, so it's called app DbContext. So now we should be fine. Okay, what happened there? What did I do? So we wanted to grab the connection string because that's the one that will help us to create a database with its table. So okay, after that, click there and press enter. Press a couple of enters to leave a space because you don't want to touch that. So I'll just position myself now. To work with APIs, we use requests, and requests, they come in the form of HTTP client. So we need to specify that so that we tell our application to be able to call those external API, which is coming from Adzuna. So what I'm going to do now is to add HTTP client so that the request can be able to be made to the API that we are consuming. We add it in a form of a service. So we'll say services dot add HTTP client. It turned yellow. Don't forget that tip. It will save you a lot. Okay, so now move all the way down. You get to this part where it says configure the HTTP request. Inside there, you see there is map open. Please remove that part there because we commented out there at the top. So let's pass in app dot use Swagger. I'll explain in a moment. Again, let's pass app dot use Swagger, not user. It's not use Swagger UI. Okay, what happened here? So this part there, it will enable Swagger's JSON format, and then that JSON format will be able to describe the available API endpoints. And then the second part, it's a giveaway, that one. It gives you the web page that you will see when you are running your MVC, which is easy to make it run and test your application as you go. Okay, and then we are good to go. So save this for me. The last thing that we're gonna do for part 1, it is to run migration so that we can create the table and everything. So what you want to do when you have multiple projects, I know you can get it through tools. So down there at the bottom, you should be able to see what is written, Package Manager Console. So click it for me. We're going to switch to commands here. And then what is important here is when you have multiple projects, for now, it is fine because we only have one. But the moment we add more project, you need to realize that we need to change them. So on the default project, there is a drop down there. You'll be able to see all the projects that are going to be inside of your solution. So there, you select one. For now, we only have one, so it's fine like that. That is okay. And then go where it says PM. Then we are going to add migration. So we're going to write add dash migration, could be in capital letters or small letters, doesn't matter. And then let's call this initial migration. Press enter. Please note that if you have any error in your application, it's not going to run. So I'm not going to skip anything. When we have errors, we will debug it together so that you are able to fix your errors as well. Because if you're following along, I think we might have the same errors. Just gonna bring this up a bit. Okay, don't worry about that. If it's yellow, we take it. The next thing we're going to say update database. So this will create the tables. Okay, everything is fine there. So before we can be able to go, let's test if everything works well. But we are not done before we can even rush to testing, because we need a controller that will be able to expose the endpoints. The endpoint is where the request that comes in, that goes out, is going to hit. So you can take it as a security guard at a club or any place that is safe. Before you can go in, you have to go through the security. When you come in, you have to say the security. That is the endpoint. So anything that you're going to do, in this case, you're going to search for a job, that is an endpoint. Apply for a job, that is an endpoint. So let's create a controller before we can do that. Test our migration passed well. So go ahead and right click controller for me, add controller. And then we're going to go for an empty one, click add. And then let's call this job controller. The controllers must always end with suffix controller. So the name of this, it is controller, job, sorry, it must always end with suffix controller. That is important. And then we'll press enter. We'll move this down so we can have enough space. So here, I'm going to start there at the top with the packages that this controller will need. First thing, we'll need access to the models. Remember, we say using the name of our application. Let's see if I can write using. Say using jobs portal dot model, not migration, models, so that we can be able to see that job class that we have there. And then since we'll be interacting with the database, we need that folder as well. So we'll say using the name of our application once again, job portal dot data folder. Perfect. So we will need all of them. So everything that we are going to use, this will need, I can tell you that we will need a service folder. We will need data transfer object folder. I'll explain when we get there. I'll show you. I'm not going to add them now because we don't need them for part one. So now we need entity framework code. So we say using, it's coming from Microsoft dot entity framework code. Then we close. We got to come back here to add more. So we're going to spend a lot of time here. All right, so now this is a controller, right? We need to change. Remember, the controller, its sole responsibility is to handle requests, anything regarding requests, whether it's a normal application or it's an API. There is request that takes place, so that's the task that it handles. So we need to change this so that this will be an API controller, because if we leave it the way it is now, the controller goes with views. So if we leave it like this, it's going to expect to have views, and an API it's not supposed to have views. So we need to change this to an API controller so that it doesn't expect views. So now let's do that. So inside of your namespace, click there and then press enter, not there. The first curly brace there for your namespace, you're going to click there. So let's add an attribute. An attribute goes inside of square brackets. So we're going to write square brackets there. Then we're going to write API controller. So this attribute is going to receive an HTTP request and be able to send back data in a JSON form. Remember, API communicates in JSON format or language, however you want to say it. So this attribute basically will just tell the ASP that this class, consider it as an API control. Do not expect to have views for this one. So after that, if it's an API now, it has been changed. So what it needs is that give me a route, because you're saying that you work with request. How am I going to access you? Where are you located? Where do you stay? So we need to provide a route. So again, we're going to use attributes. Once again, we're going to use a lot of attributes here. So let's write the word route or route, depending on where you are. And then you put round brackets. Here we specify a route or a path inside of double quotes. So you're going to write API in small letters to say that to be able to access this controller that we're turning into an API, this is what you're going to get. Some people here prefer to call this by the name of the controller, but it's just safe to write controller and allow this guy to do its job. What I just did then, that attribute will create a route for this controller, basically to point it to where it's supposed to be found. And then the controller there will be replaced, this controller in blue. So instead of you taking the name of this, you call it job there. Instead of writing jobs there, so it will automatically get that name without using the word controller there. Okay. And then now the jobs controller will then become jobs. That's it. So the root will, let me just add a comment here and showing you that to access this will just becomes like, this is how it's going to get it. API / jobs. That's how it's going to get it. So that is what that part there will do. So you're just going to strip the word controller and then get it there. You can just remove this and write jobs there and still work as well. Doesn't matter. So, okay, this is still a normal controller, by the way. So let's just change that so that we don't have issues with views. And look at that. When you hover there, it's telling you that a base class for an MVC controller with view support. So let's remove that guy. We're going to call this controller base. We're looking for controller base. Perfect. That's happiness there. Okay, so now we're going to go inside of that controller. We are working with a database. Everything is stored inside of a database. How do we then access the database context? So we are going to create a private field that will be able to store the database context. And then we will use it when we want to perform the CRUD function. The CRUD function, you can take it as a save, your read, your update, or your delete from the data itself. So we are going to write private read only, then we call the app DbContext the class itself that we have. Then you can call it underscore context or whatever you prefer. That is up to you. Then we close. Okay, So we're going to need a service as well. Remember, we want to be able to connect our external API. So this it's inside the API just for separation of concern. Just create folders, organize your code well and neat. So I'm going to create another folder. So let me just do that. Add, and then we're going to name these services. We'll finish with the services later on. So since I created that and I want this controller to have access, I'm going to go back there and say using. And then we'll say job portal dot services. Call it services. Then we click. So it's still gonna cry now because we don't have anything inside there, but it's fine. Let's leave it like that. Means services that don't exist in the current job web API. And I hope I did spell it correct. No, it's fine. It will be there. Don't worry. We will fix that later on. So now I'm going to create the same field, the private field to access the services. I'll have a class that will connect to the Adzuna web API to consume it. So we'll say private read only. And then I'm going to call that Adzuna. I don't even know how you pronounce this. So we'll call this AdzunaService. AdzunaService. So you can see that it's crying. So I'm just going to right click, add a class that should be a concrete class, and then I'll just add it there. We're gonna come back then. Okay, let's do it again. So we'll say using job portal dot, there you go. Services. Sometimes it just needs you to do that. We don't have anything inside of that class there. So that private field, now it will store the Adzuna service, which is the API that we are going to consume. So it will call the jobs that Adzuna API will be able to give it to us. So now we need a constructor. This constructor will be able to receive application DbContext and AdzunaService to automatically get whatever it has there. Remember, the DbContext contains the configuration of our database and our tables. The AdzunaService, it contains retrieving the job from the Adzuna API. So we are going to get that through the constructor. So click there, open a little bit of space. Remember, constructor CTOR tab. Then let's inject our lovely friends there. So we'll start with the first one, DbContext. The order does not matter. Usually we like to give them the same name. So you see this one has underscore context, but this one I just said context, comma. Then we grab the second guy, we injecting them now. And then we calling it AdzunaService. And then we call it like that. So now, we are going to store the database context into the private field, which is the underscore. So the reason that we do this, it's because we want other method inside of this controller to be able to use the database, the whole controller. So you're going to say underscore context, you store it, and then you do the same thing for Adzuna. It doesn't want to give it, oh, it's not that. And then we assign that guy and then close. We're done with our controller now. Okay, so now let's work. Yeah, I was very ambitious by saying that we're going to finish 2 projects here in one go. All right, so now let's get to the meat of the application. So let me just delete this, and then we'll do it ourselves. So now we need to create a method. This method will be able to allow users to search for jobs. Remember, I said the ability for a person or a user to search for a job, we consider that as an endpoint. So let's create this method now. So that will be public async. So we are using async here because we want this task to run at the same time without stopping the application in case something lags behind. We are dealing with a web API, it's not ours, an external API, and we're also dealing with the database as well. So you want to make sure that your application does not stop because it's not getting the information that it's supposed to. And one of the things that assist you in doing that is using async. So say async task. I'll change the name of that method, just want to organize it. And then inside there, we're going to pass iAction results. So let's give the name, let's call this search job. Okay, so to search a job, we need a keyword and we also need a location. You can flip this around depending on what you want. So I'm going to create a parameter here, two variables. So I'll say string, keyword, and then another one that will be string, let's say location. That's what I want to search jobs with. You can change this that you want. Okay. One thing that I forgot here is to have an attribute. I'll explain now in a moment. HTTP get, and then we're going to search there. So what is happening here? Remember I said the whole method now. The whole method there is the search job. It is an endpoint. So this endpoint will search jobs from the Adzuna Web API and saves the return jobs into our database. That's what it does. So let's go there and assist it. The first thing that I like to do when you're dealing with things like this is to check, do validation. So let's just check if the keyword or the location is supplied because we need them. You can't search without one of the two. So I'm going to use the simple if statement. Okay. So we're going to say if string, we checking the box where the user is supposed to type the keyword. Could be software engineer, developer, IT support, cybersecurity analyst, anything, that's a keyword. So we want to check if they didn't leave it blank. So I'm going to go with is null or white space. And then put that, we want to validate this field that we just created there, which is the variable. If that's the case, if they leave it null, we need to request to return an error, the 400 error there, which is a bad request. So it will tell the user or the MVC that we are going to use later on that an important information is missing. So we're going to say return, and then we're going for bad request. Let's just customize this so that it is user friendly as well. We'll customize it by passing a string inside. And then we can just say, please enter a job keyword. Or you can write anything that you want there, that is fine. Right, we're going to do the same thing now for the location. To save time, I'm just going to copy this, paste it, and then the next one will be the location there. And then the location here, I'm just going to remove this. The line, we want to make sure that we give our location by default. I'm in South Africa, so we're going to use South Africa here as the location. So I'm just going to give location to say by default, give me South Africa. You can write your own country there, should be fine. All right. So now we need to call the Adzuna service. We don't have this service, by the way. We're going to create it a bit later. So we need to call that service there. So go outside of the last if statement. So maybe let me say call our Adzuna service. Okay. So let's create a variable. We use var, and then we can call this variable jobs from Adzuna. I'm sure that I'm butchering this name. Then we assign, I'll explain why we're using the await keyword here. So we put an underscore because we access underscore Adzuna, that's where we get our services. Then we're going to say search, we will have a method there that we are going to call. I think maybe, let me just type this and then we can just go and create it so that we don't have issues. Because I don't like having errors while I'm busy typing. Async. I'll explain this. This is a method it's supposed to work, but because we don't have the method itself, that's why we are getting an error now. So basically what I'm doing here is we am calling the Adzuna service. The await keyword, it means that the controller will have to wait for external API result without stopping the application from running. That's what we are doing. So now let's go inside of our Adzuna service. We are going to start from there so that we don't have issues at all, because there will be a problem if we don't do that. Okay, let's do this AdzunaService. Then the first thing is that we need to access the models. So that will be jobs portal.models. Then we close it. And then since API communicates in JSON, so we're going to filter for that system.text.json. Then we close. Okay, so we're going to go inside the, remember we said we need API communicates in HTTP client to facilitate the request. So we need a field that will be able to store the HTTP client object. The HTTP client in C# is just a tool that is used to send the HTTP request to external API. So I'm going to create that as a private field once again. Read only HTTP client. We're going to do the same thing that we have done that side, even though we didn't finish it. So that will be underscore. Okay, secondly is that we need a field that will store the configuration values that are coming from the app settings.json. We're going to then use it to read the Adzuna application ID and the application key and also the country so that we are able to get our jobs. Again, private field, so that will be read only. The configuration, it comes from the interface class I configuration. And then we can call this like that. Whenever you do something like this, just know that you're going to need a constructor. So CTOR tab. So inside the same thing that we have done, we take HTTP client, give it a name, that, comma, you pass the I configuration. Remember, it accesses the app settings of JSON, and then configuration. Then you're going to store this I configuration, and then I HTTP client. That's a nested. Okay, so we are going to create a method here to search for jobs from the Adzuna API. So again, I'm going to use async here so that it doesn't freeze my application while it's busy searching for these jobs here. So we'll say public async task. So I action result. Then let's give this method a name. So we're going to call this method fetch jobs async. The async is just for aesthetics there. Again, we are searching the jobs based on what? The keyword. So I'll pass the parameters there, parameters, string keyword, and then string location as well. So I figure that if we can finish this, it will be easy to assist you. So now you are searching for a job. There's a possibility that you might come across a lot of jobs. In fact, this will not suffice for this. So leaving it like this, it's just going to give us the one result here. But if we get multiple jobs, where we're going to store them, how we're going to grab them back into our application. So we need to change these to a list. So I'm going to change this to a list again. Look at what is suggested. A list goes with a pair of round bracket. So the list must go to the columns. So remember, each job represents a record in the table with the columns that we specified inside of our model class. So when we get multiple jobs, it must go into this table that we created called job. It's coming from here, the model class. So that is important. Then our table, our method has been set up now. So Because we're dealing with an API now, we don't want to expose the two keys that are important inside of our application. This must stay inside of app settings. It shouldn't come this way. So let's go and grab the app key. So I'm going to create a variable that is going to go to app settings and grab the application key. So save file. Then let's call this app, not in capital letters, app ID. And then remember the I configuration is the one that goes into the app setting. So just say underscore I configuration, and then I'll use the square brackets there. Inside the square brackets, I'll put double quotes. So I'm looking for what? I called the key inside of app settings. I think I called it Adzuna. Please go and verify. Put your colon there and then give it a name that corresponds with what you have inside of app settings. This is important that it corresponds. Going to copy this because we have two keys that are similar. Now we need the key. We have app ID, need app key as well. So change this to key, and then we're still going through this, and then that will be the app key. We have three things there as well. So we fetch the country as well. So that will be country. And then I think I called it country as well. Country. Okay, that's happiness there. Again, you know the drill. Once you do this validation, you want to ensure that all of these three things are available before you can start searching for jobs. So let's check if the app ID is missing, the app key is missing, the country is missing. So I'm just going to do one and copy and paste because the syntax is the same. If and then we are going to say string. We just want to check if they didn't put anything. Dot is null or white space. We're verifying against what we have. We can't verify with that. I'm thinking of the one that we're verifying against app ID. I'm thinking of the one that we did inside the controller. So if that is missing, then we're going to throw an exception, which will be a new one, which will be invalid operation exception. And then we can add our own custom messages there. We can say Adzuna app ID is missing in your app. I would advise that you deploy your application with this. You can write something that you will remember, but you don't want people to see this just in case you can't access your API. Okay, then I'm going to copy this 3 times. Okay, let's do the second one, app key. Then we're going to change the message there. Adzuna key, app key. Okay, the last one will be the country. So we're going to take country there, pass it there. And then remember, we want to set this to the country that we are in. So for me, I'll set the country again to South Africa. And you want to make sure with the format that you did, I set it to ZAR inside of app settings. So that's why I'm going with that format. Okay, so now we're done with our validation. So now I want to make sure that when a keyword is typed, like For instance, you have software developer. When someone comes and types software or it types developer, it should be able to retrieve the information that it's supposed to relate to the job. And with that, we use what we call escape data string. So I'm just going to do that. Now I'm going to create a variable, and I'll call this variable save keyword, like save keyword. And then I'm going to say the URI, sorry, dot escape data string. So this, what it will do, like for instance, software developer will become, put this to take it to smaller letter, will become something like software. Please take, don't mind the capital letters there. It will become software. There was something like develop, something like that. We don't need that. So it will come something like that. Software developer will just become software 20 developer. That's what escape data string will do for you, and it can do the everything for all of that. So I'm just going to copy this so that we have the same thing over and over. Then we are going to do for location as well. So we did for the keyword, and then we're going to say save location. You can research more on that one just to assist you. Then we can call location there. Does the same thing as I just explained. All right. So now we need to build the Adzuna API URL, the link to getting our jobs. We need to build this URL ourselves. So I think here, just to be safe, guys, add the question mark, 2 question marks. This is an if statement. So if, let's say you type Johannesburg South here, it will become like Johannesburg the same way as I did there. So if it can't find that location, because you type like multiple, could be Johannesburg South, North, I don't know if that exists. You type 3 things that it's struggling to find the one that you are looking for, so it can leave it as blank there. That is an if statement. So if it's true, you get what is on the left. If it's false, then you get what is on right. Okay, that's good programming there. So now let's build the Adzuna API URL. Then how do we build that? We are going to create a new variable, then we're going to call this URL. So I'll use string interpolation for this. I'll use the $sign. I'm gonna paste these a couple of times here. So in fact, let's just do it one by one. Okay, I wanna build the link here. So I'll just say HTTPS. Some APIs, they do give you like the weather application that I did with you guys. I think also the image detection as well. It gives you these links so you don't have to do it yourself. I'm sure it could be there. I didn't even read this documentation for this API as well. So I'll just say API dot Adzuna. Yeah, I think you will find this. You don't have to memorize this. It should be there. V1, and then you say API /jobs. The boring part of this typing it yourself is that the chances of you I'm making a mistake, are very high. So I'll grab the country because I want to know where the jobs are coming from. And then the search, and then that will be just return just one job, just to ensure that you guys you are able to see everything in one page. Use string interpolation once again, and then say app. I need to find this so that we don't type this because I doubt it's safe. Then we can call it. It's not supposed to go inside because that's an object. That is FID. Okay, and then we're going to close there. Again, plus sign, the dollar sign. Again, it's string polishing. Okay, let me go back to, should be able to get this. Let's go to welcome, overview. There we go. There we go. There we go. There is documentation there, so you don't have to type this. There you go. You can just copy this and paste it there. So that is fine. That's some happiness there. So ampersand, say app underscore key, and then that will be the equal sign. What are we looking for? We're looking for the app key. You can put this in one line, it doesn't matter. It's just for you guys to be able to read this way. And then ampersand as well, looking for results, underscore page, and then maybe per page. You can give the number that you want. Let's say we want 10 jobs per page to be listed. And then again, and then ampersand, what are you looking for? So you can just say what, and then specify, looking for the safe keyword. So that will give you the full job there. Plus, I promise you this is the last one. And then where is it supposed to come from? Ampersand. Then you can say where, or you know the drill, it's the safe location. Perfect. Then we can just close. That should be fine. Okay. And this is where I'm going to stop with. It means that we're going to have a lot of parts. So this is where I will stop for part 1, and then for part 2, we will continue from here. Thank you for tuning in. Come back for the next part.